And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, June 29th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are brought to you by PrizePicks. We'll definitely talk about them in a bit. But before we do anything, easiest thing for you guys to do for us, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how does it feel to kick off the new era for the Washington Wizards? It's Monty Morris and Will Barton season this coming year.
I'm happy about it. I think Morris is the best player in the deal. The Wizards badly needed a point guard. They badly needed playmaking in general. So, the more I think about it, I get it from Denver's side too. But I think from like a talent acquisition point, Washington clearly wins that trade. And I also like the approach that they've kind of taken in the trades they've made, where like, assuming you're going to end up with Beal on, long term, you're kind of hamstrung in what you can do. At least getting guys where it's like, maybe we haven't seen exactly how good they are and they're better than we expected. Like Porzingis, always has the ceiling that he hasn't really reached, but could potentially reach. Kuzma, you got him out of LA where he's been better than he was in LA. I think you can make the same sort of case for Morris, where like, we haven't really seen him as, he's 27. We haven't really seen him as like a true starting point guard. Maybe he ends up being even better than he was in Denver. So like, I do like that approach that they've taken in all of their trades, where like, most likely you're just getting the guy you traded for, but like, there's at least some sort of ceiling that we haven't seen.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think it's mostly just a shuffling of deck chairs. Like, I don't really care too much about the gap between KCP and Barton. If you want to tell me it's a better fit for KCP on that team, like, sure. I don't really have much of an issue making that argument. Clearly Morris is better than Ish Smith. Yeah. Like, I like Morris, if Morris is your starting point guard, you have one of the bottom half of best starting point guards in the league. Like, he's good, not great. Very like, Tyus Jones-esque in this scenario. Solid. He's the type of guy that I would want to be my backup point guard on a year when Jamal Murray's coming back after missing a full season.
Yeah.
If the Nuggets make another move, then I don't hate this. But if this is just to skirt the tax, I think they made the team like very, very slightly worse.
I think that's fair. I think a lot just like comes down to the health of Murray too. Like if Murray's healthy and good and whatever, then I like it for Denver in that KCP fills a really important role for them. But if Murray's not going to be 100% or isn't 100%, then you're going to wish you had Monte Morris.
Yeah. Like, in the grand scheme of things, nothing will matter. It's two guys going to the Wizards that are like perfectly cast as, I don't know, like the 6th or 7th best guy on a team, which is essentially their entire roster outside of Beal and Porzingis. Yeah. And both of those guys are probably consistently overcast by one spot in that type of hierarchy.
Right.
The Wizards are ripe for like a consolidation trade to like move out rotation pieces to someone else.
Yeah. I mean, right now there's like 12 guys that are probably in their rotation. From a like where they were to where they are now, I think clearly is a win for the Wizards. Like Ish Smith was their starting point guard. Now it's Monte Morris.
Yeah. He's awful. I don't understand why anyone wants him. Why?
I like him as a backup.
Why?
Plays hard. He's fast. He can get out in transition.
Oh my God, you can find a million dudes. He's 34 years old, 47% true shooting the past 2 seasons. Not exactly like a rebounder or anything good there. Defensively going to get beat like a drum because he's 6 feet tall. He's awful. He should not be in the league.
Yeah, I mean,
makes no sense.
Didn't want him as the starting point guard, which is where we were heading.
I wouldn't want him as the starting point guard of my G League affiliate. 7-game slate here today. Originally, this was going to be a live before lock, but FanDuel's got a 5-game very early. DraftKings has the 4-game early slate that locks an hour after FanDuel. The complications of all of this turn this into a strategy show. So we are going to break down the 7-game main slate for tonight. For the final 5 minutes or so, we'll take a lap through the DK early slate that locks at 1, talk about, our top pitchers and top stacks tool, and we'll see what we've got there. But for now, you and I are going to break down tonight's 7-game main slate. How did yesterday's monster 15-gamer work out for you?
Normal.
You're not a
I think I
millionaire,
lost
I
like,
assume, because you're here.
what'd you say?
You're not a millionaire, I assume,
No.
because you're here.
Yeah, that correct. No, normal. I lost 50% in GPPs or whatever. Had some solid teams that just didn't quite come through.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I did not have anything of interest. Did make some tweaks, figured out a way to consolidate my player pool a little bit, which I think was one of my bigger issues with this no stack strategy that's been going on for the past 2 weeks. So we'll end up seeing where that goes. But I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Yep.
Phillies and Braves. 4.2 run implied total for the Phillies, 4.7 for the Braves. It's Ranger Suarez and Kyle Wright. And these guys are basically owned the same in very different price tiers. Kyle Wright is 9,500. That's the second most expensive pitcher on today's slate. He's 16% owned. Suarez is 6,900. So you get a very, very good benefit of price. He is also 15% owned at this point. I don't like Suarez as much as I like Wright, but obviously we're talking about two very different guys. So start with the guy that you like more.
I mean, I think I like Wright more here. I am kind of winging it for a second because I got logged out of the site, so trying to get back to everything. But you're getting the Phillies lineup without Harper, so that's obviously a benefit. Wright has been a very good pitcher all season long. One of the higher strikeout percentages on the slate. He's at 26.6%, 3.22 xFIP. So all of that looks good. And for Suarez, like I like the salary there, but this is a really scary matchup for him going up against a right-handed heavy Atlanta team that has tons and tons of power in Philadelphia. For the season, we've also just seen Suarez take a step back from where he was last year. When they moved him from the bullpen last year to the starting rotation, I expected him to drop off, and he really didn't. But so far this year, only an 18% strikeout percentage, 4.15 xFIP, and like I said, going up against all these right-handed power bats in the Atlanta lineup.
I'm going to end up with basically no Suarez, but I don't know what that issue, like, I don't mind for this particular iteration of the Braves lineup, but I think that I'm going to get to two other pay down options a little bit more frequently. We'll definitely talk about those guys in a bit. God, it's just another day on DraftKings where the mid tier is loaded at pitching. Is it like, do you think we see a shift moving forward? I just feel like we're constantly getting these like 8K and like low 9K, high 7 to low 9 guys just crushing the ownership. We've got Ohtani again today, 9,100, 44% owned. Hunter Green, 8,100 today, 37% owned. I don't know how we're going to get out of this mid tier that we're running out in pitching as of late.
I mean, the answer would be that sites start not underpricing aces by $1,000.
Yeah, I would really like them to do that. Let's talk bats. Neither one of these teams is all that interesting from an ownership perspective. Braves are 7th. The Phillies are 10th. But the Braves are certainly interesting from a top stack perspective. 2nd in our top stack tool today, significantly ahead of our current ownership mark. Plus, you have Suarez getting some ownership. I don't love this, no Acuna in this potential lineup is a problem for me, but I like Atlanta a lot here.
Yeah, so do I. You mentioned Suarez getting some ownership. That's a nice bonus. But even if he wasn't, I mean, he's only striking out 18% of right-handed hitters this year. He's allowed a 172 expected ISO. That's not awful, but it's not great. And it is a favorable hitter spark. And even without Acuna and Albies, you just still have so much right-handed power here with Swanson, d'Arnaud, Riley, Ozuna sometimes. Contreras has hit well this year. Matt Olson hits lefties well, although Suarez has been pretty lights out in terms of limiting power to lefties. You have Adam Duvall toward the bottom of the order as well. Even though they're missing two of their better hitters, obviously their best hitter and then Albies, you still have a lot of right-handed power here that's not getting much ownership against a pitcher that is pulling some.
Just read that it's looking like Denver is still going to be $150,000 into the tax. So they aren't even skirting the luxury tax with this move, and they'll only have the taxpayer MLE, not the full mid-level exception. So now I really don't know what the hell they're doing. Can we just have an NBA strategy show, please? Throw this baseball stuff in the garbage. How do you feel about the Phillies on the opposite side of Kyle Wright? Clearly, lefty power will work, but 10th in ownership, 10th in our top stack odds, 10th in our stack score. Seems like they're appropriately owned today.
Yeah, nothing that really stands out to me from the Philly side. Like you can still make the ballpark case, but so far this year against left-handed hitters, a 166 expected ISO for right, 26.6% strikeout percentage. He's held righties to a 114 expected ISO. Clearly, you're fine getting to some Schwarber or Castellanos or Hoskins or whatever, but there's nothing that really stands out. Schwarber would be the top guy for me from Philly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty easily Schwarber too. Always make a case for Real Muto just because of catcher eligibility, but I think Schwarber way ahead here. Are there cash options in this one? Because we still have this god awful Dodgers team in Coors Field. So we know that we're going to get 4 to 5 of those guys, particularly on a 7-game slate where everything is much more consolidated. It's going to be really hard to get away from the Dodgers. Dodgers 6.4 run implied total today. Next closest is the Rockies with 4.8. So we've got a chasm. Are there cash options on either the Atlanta side or the Philly side for you?
I mean, kind of tough to say like this early in the day, but I wouldn't. I mean, Swanson, I think, is going to be a top shortstop play. D'Arnaud's probably a top catcher option. There's nothing that
Yeah.
stands out though in terms of like, wow, that guy's wildly underpriced.
Yeah, that's sort of where I end up here. I don't see anybody that like you're going to have to get away from the Dodgers in some places. I just don't, we've got Trey Turner projected for 39% ownership at short. It's going to be hard for him to not be the shortstop in a cash lineup. And like, I think he's the best shortstop, obviously. But after that, you can kind of go wherever you would like. Swanson at 5,100, like if you're just going to save $900, he's probably not the answer over someone like Turner. But yeah, I don't see anybody that immediately stands out. I just want to get to a bunch of the Braves today. I'm happy to do that.
I'm glad that Arcathelza was listening when you said exactly when we were going to talk about the 4-gamer, so that way, he wouldn't be spamming chat complaining about it.
Yeah, it's pretty sure it's on the sidebar too.
Yep.
At least we can just ignore everything that exists in terms of. Would you just do you not look at the screen and mute the show? Because that's a very interesting way to take it in. You ready to go to the next one?
Yep.
Blue Jays and Red Sox. 4.7 run implied total for the Jays, 3.8 for the Red Sox. We've got Alek Manoah going for Toronto, Nick Pivetta going for Boston. Pivetta rather, getting no ownership whatsoever. 3%, 9,200 today against the Blue Jays. To me, basically one of the worst options you can get to because all of the other guys that cost around him are better. Alek Manoah is one of those guys, $500 cheaper, 25% owned. I can make a case that that's even a little bit light. I significantly prefer getting to Manoah than Pivetta. Where do you land on these guys?
Yeah, same here. I don't love the matchup against Boston for Manoah. Getting 25% ownership kind of scares me, but at the same time, it's a 7-game slate and there's only so many good pitchers on it. So I understand why he's getting it. He's a good pitcher. He struck out just shy of 23% of hitters this year, 3.78 xFIP. The Red Sox lineup is solid. Like I said, I don't love taking pitchers against them, but at 8,700, you are getting a little bit of a discount from Manoah's talent level as well. For Pivetta, it's more difficult for me to get to just because he is more expensive. He does have a slightly higher strikeout percentage at 24%. 3.97 xFIP is solid. He has done a pretty good job of limiting home runs so far this year too, and that's something that has plagued him in the past, but it does seem likely that that's going to turn around sooner than later. 122 actual ISO allowed to right-handed hitters for Pivetta this year, 198 expected ISO, 154 actual ISO allowed to lefties, 223 expected ISO, and this is a pitcher that has struggled with home runs in the past, so I do expect that to turn around a bit. Yeah, it's tough for me to pay more for Nick Pivetta against Toronto than I would be paying for Alek Manoah or Hunter Green, basically. But you could, I guess, make the ownership case where he's getting 4% and every other pitcher I want to play is in the double digits, basically. But
Yeah.
outside of that, I don't really have any case I can make for Pivetta.
No, I mean, of everybody 7,600 or higher, Kopech or higher, like I have Pivetta as the worst option relative to salary. So I just don't care enough. There are so many better arms to me, and I'm just going to load up on Manoah like I normally do on every slate. We talk about the bats then. No ownership going to Pivetta. Ownership is coming into the Blue Jays, but they're only at 6th, and they are 6th in our top stack tool. Probably appropriately owned against Pivetta. I don't I'm going to get to Toronto for sure. There's so much power in the Blue Jays lineup that I can't avoid it, but I don't see them as any sort of real priority.
I do like the Blue Jays if they're not going to pull a lot of ownership. Right now, they're kind of middle of the pack in ownership. But all the reasons I just said about Pivetta, where I do think I think he's a solid pitcher. I really always have. He's somebody that used to burn me quite frequently because I would play him every slate. But I'm expecting those power numbers to come back up for his opponents, and Toronto certainly has a lot of power in their lineup. So you're talking about all these good right-handed hitters going up against a guy that has a 198 expected ISO allowed to righties. If they're not going to pull that much ownership, I do like getting there. Individually, right now, we have 12% going to Springer, 10% to Kirk, Bichette, and Vlad between 8 and 9%. All of those seem pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think they could take on a little bit of additional ownership. They'll probably end up being like my 4th or 5th most exposed team, at least based on what I see now. Any justification to getting to Boston against Manoah?
Not really. I mean, they're a good offense, so there's that, but like there's nothing about Manoah that stands out.
Yeah, I don't. You liking that Betts Bellinger nonsense?
Yeah, like the whole team decided this. The whole team of ridiculously good major league hitters isn't hitting because Mookie Betts isn't in the lineup.
Fucking all-star team. You can pick those names out of a hat each day and put them 1 through 9, and it's
Right.
barely going to affect them.
And it's not like we did some weird thing where they threw like a bad hitter at leadoff for some reason. They've been leading off Trey Turner.
Yeah, it's 2 games in Colorado. Like they could just as easily go for 20 tonight, and the average for the series looks perfectly normal.
Yeah. I think Dodgers splits without Mookie Betts leading off might be my new favorite over when Siege claimed that Matt Carpenter could only hit in one particular lineup spot.
Yeah, that's not generally a thing. Cash options here. Kirk, potentially, depending on what's going on in Dodger land. Springer, 4,600.
Yeah, either of them are
Something
fine.
here. There's something there.
Yeah,
Nothing from
they're
Boston,
both
clearly.
they're kind of similar to like the Swanson DRNO pieces where like I'm not looking at them and saying like, oh, clearly that's where you would get to, but
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocking if you did. Like I assume you're just going to play Will Smith over
Yeah.
Kirk.
Yeah. I mean, 40% owned Will Smith right now. Likely cash catcher. Okay. Anything else here? Blue Jays or Red Sox?
Nope.
Seems like the perfect opportunity to talk about today's schedule. Coming up at 5 p.m., Adam will be back with the boss man, Alex Baker. He is Awesemo now. No one else is Awesemo. There is no collective Awesemo. So you get Awesemo, you get Ship My Money. Live before lock back at 6. That is not me. So I assume it's Greg and Eric. And then finally, PGA live before lock tonight at 8 p.m. breaking down the John Deere Classic. Make sure you get your lineups in. If you don't know what contests to play, go check out today's process show where I broke down all of the contests for the PGA for the PGA that locks tomorrow morning at 6:30. Get into the ones that I tell you to get into, and you'll be better off. Now, free content for today. You're watching this show. That's good for you. MLB main slate ownership projections are free. So the ownership that we talk about on this show for tonight's slate, it's free. Go to stokastic.com to check it out. PGA golfer rankings are also free. Guardians taking on the Twins. This is a coin flip game. Cal Quantrill and Dylan Bundy. This is also a game where both pitchers are getting no ownership whatsoever. Do you want to roster either Cal Quantrill or Dylan Bundy today?
Pretty tough to make a case for either one. Neither pitcher is good at really anything. Dylan Bundy has an 18% strikeout percentage, allowing 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. Cal Quantrill has a 15% strikeout percentage, 4.82 xFIP. Neither matchup is great. The Guardians are an above-average offense in terms of production that are extremely difficult to strike out. The Twins, you can get some strikeouts, but you also have to navigate your way through a ton of guys with a lot of power. I mean, 2 through 7 in this projected lineup where you have Buxton, Polanco, Correa, Kepler, Kirilloff, Sanchez. Those guys all have power. Luis Arias is just a good hitter that doesn't strike out at the top of the order. It's just really tough, I think, to make a case for either guy.
Yeah, I think that you and I are on the same page here. When we talk about bats, things are a little bit different. The Guardians are second in aggregate ownership, eighth in our top stack tool. Now, Jose Ramirez is driving a lot of this. He is 26% owned. The rest of the team is basically around 10 to 12. Kwan gets a little bit of extra bump from the leadoff spot. What do you want to do here with Cleveland, who are very easy to roster? Jose Ramirez at 5,100, most expensive guy. Next most expensive guy is at 4K. So they are cheap, easy to get to from a value perspective. Is there too much ownership here?
It's kind of borderline for me because on the one hand, you do have three guys, or really, like you have Ramirez himself just sort of offsetting that aggregate ownership number at 22%. He's $5,100. Like that is a mispricing on Jose Ramirez in this spot. So he looks great. I understand why Steven Kwan's getting that ownership. I understand why Franmil Reyes is getting that ownership. Then you have Naylor, Rosario, Gonzalez all coming in between 9 and 10%. So it is a pretty popular team. And like if you're just going to throw Ramirez, Kwan, Reyes, Naylor, Rosario into a lineup, you're going to be overlapping with a lot of Cleveland people, and that's going to be kind of difficult to differentiate from. But you do get lower owned guys that aren't as good, like Miles Straw, Luke Miley, whoever down towards the bottom, that you can mix in, kind of offset some of that ownership. It's a good spot, but I think most likely I end up using them more as like one-offs and mini stacks.
Are you more interested in the Twins side of this one? They are third in our top stack tool, so significantly better off there. Not quite the value that we see for Cleveland, but fourth in aggregate ownership. And it's significantly more balanced. Jorge Polanco is pulling a decent chunk, $3,700 second baseman, I think makes some sense. Nick Gordon pulling a bunch too. He's got the MPE 2,500, but the Twins as a stack, way lower owned than Cleveland. Is the Minnesota side the better side here?
I prefer the Minnesota side just given the ownership because
Yeah,
you still have a lot of power here. You're facing a pitcher in Quantrill who hasn't given up a ton of power this year, but does have a 233 expected ISO allowed to lefties, 176 to righties. He's another one that seems like he's been getting pretty lucky. The expected ISO to righties is 56 points higher than the actual ISO. The expected ISO to lefties is like 60 something points higher. And he doesn't strike guys out. And you just have power from both sides of the plate here from Minnesota. And then when you look at the ownership, Polanco's pulling 15% at 3,700. That makes a lot of sense. Buxton at 5,600 at 10% makes sense. Nick Gordon getting 10%. He's only 2,500 with shortstop outfield eligibility. So I get that. But after that, like Kirilloff at 6%, Correa at 5%, Arias and Sanchez and Kepler all sub 5%. Like when you talk about the Minnesota hitters that aren't pulling that much ownership, you're still talking about really good hitters. When you talk about the Cleveland guys that aren't pulling much ownership, one, there's fewer of them, and two, they are not good.
Yeah, like getting to a combination of 5% owned Carlos Correa and 5% owned Gary Sanchez at shortstop and catcher, that feels fantastic to me. And if I'm getting those guys, like I also don't mind that I get a 15% owned Jorge Polanco on a day where the Dodgers are 40% owned. So I'm very interested in the Twins, given the relationship between top stack odds and ownership.
Agreed.
Cash options here, Jose Ramirez,
Yep.
for sure. Probably Polanco.
Yeah, so
as
Polanco,
as an option.
Yeah, so like Ramirez and Polanco would be the ones that I would assume I get to first. Wouldn't surprise me if you end up with Buxton. Wouldn't surprise me if you ended up with Kwan.
Yeah. There's a lot more to see here between the Guardians and Twins.
Yep. Yeah, it should be a good
Ramirez
spot for offense.
Oh yeah. I'm surprised to see the implied total as low as it is.
Yeah, that's kind of surprising to me too.
Like, because it's not like Quantrill or Bundy are any good. This seems like a more. I would not be surprised if we see. So this game is like around a 9 total right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to the deeper dive and live before lock later tonight, and that jumps to like 9.5, and each team gets it like an extra, quarter of a run. I think that matters a lot actually. So pay attention to that. We could see the offense climb a bit. Anything else here? Guardians and Twins.
Nope.
Cardinals and Marlins, 3.8 run implied total for the Cardinals, 4.1 for the Marlins. Andre Payante and Sandy. How do you want me to do it? The correct way or the way that you're going to do it?
Alcantara.
Sandy Alcantara going for the Marlins, 17% owned as the most expensive pitcher on this slate at the full figure, 10K. Payante is 6% owned at 5,100. I think Alcantara is appropriately owned at that mark. I think Payante is also appropriately owned at 5,100 and 6% owned. Let's start with Sandy, because I know that that's going to be a more interesting talking point, I think. What do you think about him at 10K against the Cardinals?
I think he's good, but I'm kind of surprised he's getting as much ownership as he is, given the matchup and the fact that he's outside of Miami. Alcantara is just a good pitcher, but like when you talk in terms of strikeout percentage, he's only at 23% for the season. 3.45 xFIP is good. Half a home run per 9 innings is good. 7% walk percentage is good. He's a very good pitcher, but you're going up against this Cardinals team that on their active roster, they lead the league in WRC plus. They have a sub 20% strikeout percentage. He's more expensive than every other pitcher on the slate on DraftKings. If he's going to get 17% ownership, and Hunter Green for $2,000 less, yeah, he's getting twice the ownership, but he's $2,000 less. Ohtani's $900 less. It's just going to be kind of tough for me, I think, to get to as much Alcantara, given that the ownership is there.
So we had this little gimmick yesterday when we had our show. Do you want to try typing his name into Baseball Reference and go into that pronunciation guide, or do you just ignore it for examples that don't work for you?
What are you talking about?
Go to his pronunciation in Baseball Reference and be prepared to just be incorrect. This was your answer yesterday, so it's got to be the answer today.
Contra.
Tra. You're putting two syllables that are very clearly separated in the pronunciation guide into one syllable. Ta-ra. Ta-ra.
It says Truh. Oh, I'm not looking at the Baseball Reference one. I'm looking at Googled, how do you say Sandy Alcantara?
Oh, I'm looking at the pronunciation on Baseball Reference. Alcantara. 4 syllables.
I'm almost positive that's wrong.
Well,
because we had this conversation last year, and he pronounces his differently than other Alcantaras.
You should send an email to Baseball Reference, let them know.
I'm fine. I'm going to the MLB. I'm going to the Marlins pronunciation guide.
Is that a thing?
If I can find it.
All right. I might beat you to it. I don't know.
I'm not sure it exists. I'm finding it for like other teams.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm finding it for some others as well. If you type in Marlins, does it go there? Oops. Oof. We dropped the ball. Yeah, you did. And no, I don't want to. I typed Marlins pronunciation guide, and half the links are how to pronounce Marlins. It's just like, I'm not that dumb. Anyway,
we had this conversation last year, though, and I was right.
I think we've had it for every year that we've done this show. And you're still wrong. What do you want to do with Payante? If it's Payante or Palante, I have no idea.
Yeah,
this one I don't care about.
Yeah, I mean, he's 5,100, so if you get there, fine, but it's nothing I'm expecting to get or going out of my way to get
to. Palante is what's listed at Baseball Reference, and since we know them to be 100% accurate, we might as well just go with it. Let's talk about the third most owned team on today's slate. That would be the Miami Marlins. They are the #1 top value team, 19% likelihood to be the top value, in fact. 7th in our top stack tool, but 8.5% owned in the aggregate. Do you like them as a value option? Is that something you're looking at here? I don't find them nearly as appealing as the public. I think they're massively overowned.
Yeah, I'm with you. Mostly because I was still trying to figure out how to pronounce his name, but yeah, I think that they're going a bit overowned here as well. They do have a really high top value percentage, so I understand why they're getting the ownership. What did you say that it was, Payante?
Yeah, it is Payante.
Yeah. He's been good at limiting production this year. 113 expected ISO to righties, 113 expected ISO to lefties. Doesn't strike guys out, so you are expecting Miami to put the ball in play. They do get a nice park shift playing in St. Louis outside in the summer as opposed to playing inside in Miami. They're really cheap. So I like the power upside that you get for those prices. You're going to be able to build really good teams around them. The only issue is just, how much ownership ends up coming in there because of those prices. Right now, Chisholm, Anderson, and Cooper all north of 10%. Aguilar's at 9%. Then it drops off a bit. So I do think it's a lineup where you can offset the ownership a little bit. Like, for example, Jorge Soler is getting 7% ownership. Avisail Garcia is getting 6%. Those guys both have plenty of power and just aren't getting as much ownership. So, if you stack Miami and play one of them instead of, say, Brian Anderson, that's one way you can kind of offset it.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to need that. Again, if we continue to have $9,100 Ohtani and $8,700 Alek Manoah and Hunter Green and even Kopech to a degree where there's just like a monster ceiling there, why do I need to pay down for the Marlins bats when I don't have to save money already? I mean, they got a 4.1 run implied total. I don't care how good of a value they are. They don't look like a good option. I have them 12th out of the 14 teams that are on today's slate. I actively dislike them. I don't see it today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike them, but
they aren't as bad as the Cardinals, who I do have as the worst potential option for today. They are 13th in ownership, 14th in top stack, 14th in stack score. Do you see any disagreement there? Is there anything appealing for you for the Cardinals?
Their offense in general, but no, I mean, Alcantara is just not somebody that I really want to take bats against.
I don't see a cash option in this game on either side. To me, it's mostly just gonna be like, I'm gonna have some Sandy, probably in and around the field, and I'm gonna have nothing else in this game of value. I think that's where I end up. I just don't like either side of this, particularly the offense. I think the offenses both look awful. Let's talk Prize Picks, presenting sponsor of this show. Happy to have them as the presenting sponsor. If you use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, you will get a 100% match deposit bonus up to $100. So if you put in 50, they're only going to match with 50. If you put in 100, they will match with 100. We have the Prize Picks player prop tool on awesemo.com. On stokastic.com. That will help you out a lot. It's really hard when the promo code still crosses over. And you can enter basically every sport: MMA, lacrosse, Rocket League, golf, KBO, Call of Duty. We're all over the map, but you're building out prop bets, over-unders on mostly player props. And if you do 5 of them on one parlay card, you can net up to 10x your entry fee. We're going to touch on a couple of the relevant MLB options for today. I'm going to look at pitchers' fantasy score. We are going to start it off with, who's the first guy I get to that matters that we talked about? Alek Manoah, over under 34.5.
Under.
I got him at 34.4. So I think that one is smack dab on the number. How about your boy, Sandy Alcantara?
I don't know who that is.
The line, 35.5.
Under.
Yeah, I'm taking the under on that one as well. One final player before we stop. Kyle Wright. Feels like this line is way too high. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be the case. Now that I look at my number, I think that it is. 32.5 for Kyle Wright.
Over.
Over. All righty. I got him at I got him at 30 on the dot. So I'm coming in a little lighter there on Kyle Wright. We'll see where that all ends up, guys. Thank you to Prize Picks for being the sponsor. Make sure you guys are signing up using that promo code AWESEMO. We'll go to, let's see, we just finished up Miami St. Louis sponsor read. On to game number 5. Moving through this slate pretty quickly. Cubs and Reds.
Okay, the Baseball Reference pronunciation guide on Sandy Alcantara says what I said. Look at the difference between Raul Alcantara and Sandy Alcantara and how they say to pronounce it.
All right. So Sandy is definitely Alcantara. There's no way around what I see on that screen. Now, who am I searching for? Just another guy with that same last name? Sergio?
No, Raul. Raul is what you're saying.
Sergio is what I'm saying as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like these are all the same thing.
No, one says Alcantara and one says Alcantara.
And neither of those things are what you say.
Alcantara.
Okay. None of the two things that you just gave me an example of are the things that come out of your mouth.
When I gave you the example, I said it wrong, but it's Alcantara.
When I gave you the example, I gave you the wrong example. Obviously, you should have known that. Oh, God, just incredibly incorrect here. Cubs and Reds, 4-run implied total for the Cubs, 3.6 for the Reds. I love that this is just like the only thing you're doing on the opposite side of the camera right now. Just full on paying attention to nothing other than pronouncing Alcantara. It's great. Justin Steele for the Cubs, Hunter Green for the Reds in a battle of guys whose names look very, very similar. 15% owned for Steele, 37% owned for Hunter Green here. Clearly, I like Hunter Green more than I like Justin Steele, but I certainly see Steele as a potential paydown option. I like Steele more than I like Suarez. Start with Hunter Green, though. Is the 37% justified?
I think so. I mean, there's power in the Cubs lineup, but there's also a lot of strikeouts. Hunter Green has very good stuff. He's allowed to go deep into games. He's struck out 27% of righties this year, 31% of lefties. He's had some power issues, so I mean, that is the scary part, but I think that's just offset by the fact that he's $8,100 and has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, I don't really have much of an issue here. He's basically... I think Ohtani is clearly the number one option for today, and we see that in the ownership. I don't have a huge gap between Manoah, Green, and Kopech relative to salary, but I think the ownership is perfectly reasonable. Do you want to pay down with Steele against a lowly Reds offense?
I think it's fine. I still feel better about getting to that spot than Suarez. And at similar ownership, I think I would get to Steele first. It's just clearly a better spot against the Reds, but it's not like a spot I'm going on my way to get to.
Okay. If you're paying down, who is your priority pay down option?
I don't think I really have one.
Okay.
Like I probably just kind of spread it out between Steele, Suarez, mixing some Kopech. Have a hard time getting to much of anything else.
Do you find yourself getting to bats in this game? Cubs are 9th in aggregate ownership, 11th in our top stack tool. The Reds are 11th in ownership, 12th in the top stack tool. I don't really have much of a separation here. I do think that they're probably like in combined like the 10th best option. I don't want to get to the Cubs or the Reds.
I was distracted because now Terry's lying to me in chat. No, I mean, for the Cubs, like, it makes some sense because Green does give up power, and you do have power in this lineup. Ian Happ at 3,700, I think, looks pretty good. But overall, I think he's one of the more talented pitchers on the slate, and I'm probably just not going to get to the Cubs.
Yeah, I don't see it. I think the first, the Morel, Ortega, Contreras, Happ, Wisdom, fivesome at the top is okay. But I think this is another very easy spot for me to not have a lot of offense. Like, who's the best bat in this game?
I mean, I do like Happ. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan India at 3,900 probably is the actual answer.
Brandon Drury, like none of it's good.
Though.
None of it's good. None of it's good.
Thank you.
I would rather avoid basically all of Cubs Reds. Alrighty.
Yeah. But from a value standpoint, Jonathan India does look good.
Yeah. There are no cash options in this game. That
potentially,
much other than Hunter Green.
India was a very viable cash second baseman yesterday. It could be the case again today.
Let's see.
I probably would play Polanco first.
I'm going to take a look. At second base, highest owned guys as of right now, Muncy at 30 something, Polanco at 15, Gavin Lux at 20. I'm probably playing Lux over India.
Depends where he's hitting.
But I think they're close.
If Lux is hitting,
I'm with you. I think the answer either out of all of these anyway are Polanco, who I have grading out even better and still getting ownership. So
yeah, I lean Polanco.
Yeah, same. Okay, let's go to the big one again. Before we get to it, guys, hit that like button. I don't know where we're at right now. Let me pull up that so I can actually give you guys the number. We have 87 likes, 360 people watching. We need to be over 100, so hit that thumbs up. Did you end up getting to the Dodgers last night?
No.
Okay. 4.8 run implied total for the Rockies, 6.4 for the Dodgers. German Marquez and Julio Urias. Neither one of these guys getting any ownership. I would be okay getting a little bit of Urias at 8,400, but I don't really need a lot. It's not that kind of play. Just 1% owned doesn't seem like the right number. I assume we're going to be mostly avoiding pitching here.
Yeah, I think so. Urias is one of those guys where he's under-owned at 1%, but he's also still extremely unlikely to be the best pitcher option, so I'm just not going to get too much of him. Marquez obviously is like, he's cheap. He's 5,500, but he's also facing the Dodgers. It's just really tough for me to want to get to that one either.
Okay. Well, then let's talk offenses. You should not be surprised to hear that the Dodgers are first in our top stack metric. Number one in aggregate ownership at a crisp 34.5%. 34.5% ownership going to the Dodgers. How do you handle it today? Is this going to look more like 2 days ago for you, where you do get aggressively to the Dodgers on a smaller slate? Or are we going to look more like yesterday where you're shrinking it?
I'm hoping yesterday. I think
Okay.
yesterday at the current ownership, 40% coming into Will Smith, 38% to Trey, 34 to Muncy. This is also the best pitcher they faced in the series, which probably means they'll have the best game. Because
I had that thought process earlier
yeah.
today. The moment I typed in Marquez, I was like, they're going to bomb Marquez and like be dog shit against Chad Kuhl.
Yep. That's how baseball works. But given this ownership, I expect to be under the field on the Dodgers. I still think that there are teams, and it depends on what happens with ownership elsewhere too, right? Like if Atlanta's ownership stays as low as it is, I'm going to want to get to Atlanta. If those Minnesota bats, other than Buxton and Polanco, stay, in the 5% range, I'm going to really want to get to Minnesota. If you see those come up closer to like 10% across the board, then maybe I end up moving back to the Dodgers like I did the other day, just because that's sort of what happened then. But the way it looks right now, I think I'm likely to be just going elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you're clearly going to pick up some of these guys in as like one-offs a little bit more frequently, just because on a 7-game slate you run out of options. And if you're running out a lower owned stack, if you're running out a Braves stack or a Twins stack or something like that, you could handle a one-off Justin Turner or something along those lines. I can't put together a 30% owned Dodger stack. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's
I
tough.
do,
The other day when I
however,
did it, it's one of those where I'm not going to just completely override everything that I do for baseball.
yeah.
I believe based on the numbers that were in there that it was the right thing to do, I guess. But I don't want that to be the case.
Right. I do want to get to the Rockies. Once again, in cores, 4.8 run implied total is the second highest mark. No one in the Rockies lineup north of 10% ownership. I think Chris Bryant is under-owned. I think Blackman's under-owned. Bryant's under-owned. Crone's under-owned. Brendan Rodgers is under-owned. I like Colorado.
Yeah, so do I. How do you pronounce Marquez's first name, by the way?
Erman.
Okay, we're on the same page there.
Oh, you mean me being correct again?
I don't know if you saw, we got confirmation in chat that there's a video of Sandy saying his name the way that I say it.
Yeah, and I remember that being like the way that we got to this answer either last year or 2 years ago or whatever, but I refuse to use anything other than Baseball Reference.
Well, I mostly appreciate the person that then came into chat after Ryan Stubbs said that and said that I was definitely wrong, implying that Sandy is also definitely wrong.
Yeah, I assume he's wrong.
But yeah, I'm with
Look,
you on the
Rockies. I listen to my wife say my last name or our last name on the phone to people. I don't think she says it correctly.
I'm pretty sure I pronounce my own last name wrong like 80% of the time.
Fair. So you should be the foremost like authority on other people's names when you can't pronounce your own correctly. Really help yourself.
Mine requires you to like enunciate though, and I just would rather mumble through it.
Like instead of saying Alcantara, you just turn it into Contra, like a Nintendo game.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that's it. But no, I'm with you on the Rockies. I've been getting to them more than the field the last couple of slates as well, and I don't have any issue doing that here either. Urias is good, but he's not great. 155 expected ISO, only a 20.4% strikeout percentage to right-handed hitters this year. Putting the ball in play in Coors Field, good things, can always happen. You have a right-handed heavy lineup. You have Bryant back, so that does add some power as well. I think Colorado looks pretty good at their current ownership.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I'm surprised they're as low. Like, I don't see the gap on some of these guys. Like, this is going to be like pretty blasphemous, but not totally. Like, if Cody Bellinger's 28% owned, Charlie Blackmon shouldn't be 3. There's just not that big of a gap for two guys playing in basically the exact same run environment. Is German Marquez a better pitcher than Urias? Like, maybe. They're probably like equals. Why is one of these guys who's hitting higher in the order, like 1/8 of the ownership? That's just one example here, but it's just so much easier to go to the Rockies and think I can win a GPP this way.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Dodgers obviously project better, look better. They have better hitters throughout their lineup, but you're still getting like if this game weren't in Coors Field and it was the same matchups, obviously you would still play the Dodgers, but you're not playing them at nearly the same rates that you are. The Rockies, it's the same kind of thing, like they're just not getting the same sort of bump that the Dodgers are, even though they're playing in the same great park.
Yeah. Most expensive guy in the Rockies lineup is $4,800 CJ Cron, whereas that's like 4 different dudes on the Dodgers.
Highest owned guy there. Like Chris Bryant is the highest owned guy on the Rockies, and he is lower.
I think he's under owned too.
He's half the ownership of the lowest owned guy on the Dodgers.
Right. It's insane. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I would like to get more of Colorado. And then, so from a cash perspective, take your pick of 5 Dodgers. I'm going to be very, very surprised if it's not 5 Dodgers. Like Ohtani, Green, and 5 Dodgers probably leaves you a lot of money, especially if the Dodgers are slotting in one of these 2K guys. Like I've got Jake Lamb in the 9 hole right now at flat 2K. If that happens to be the case, like he's going to be one of them, and then you're definitely getting 5 Dodgers. If you can find a Dodger to pay under 3K for, that's going to allow you to have 5 Dodgers in cash, is my assumption.
Yeah, I think you're getting 5. It's just a matter of which 5 fit into your lineup.
Yeah. So enjoy that, everybody. Enjoy that. Closing out the main slate with the Angels, 4.5 run implied total for LA, 3.4 for the White Sox. Shohei Ohtani on the hill for LA. Michael Kopech going for Chicago. 7,600 for Kopech, 16% owned. I think he's pretty under owned in this spot, given what his ceiling could be from a strikeout perspective. And there are a ton of Ks in the Angels lineup, but we have to start with Ohtani, 9,100, 44% owned, the most owned pitcher on the slate. Is there any argument that he's not the best option today?
No, I mean, the White Sox have good hitters in their lineup. It's a good offense, so it's a somewhat scary spot, but you're just getting Ohtani at a much cheaper price than he really should ever be at. He has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He's really good. It's not like he's only a good strikeout pitcher. 2.71 xFIP is the best on the slate. He's only walking 6% of hitters this year. So outside of just it's baseball and the White Sox could have a good game, there's no sort of argument I can make against Ohtani.
Yeah, I don't even want to begin to try to make that sort of pitch. He's just great. What do you want to do with Kopech though on the opposite side? Fantastic strikeout matchup, 16% owned, cheap price tag. I think he's getting underrepresented here. I think he's the most underrepresented pitcher on the slate.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. He walks a lot of guys and has struggled from, he has a 2.59 ERA, but a 4.75 xFIP. Strikeout stuff's good, though. I mean, the stuff in general is good. 23% strikeout percentage. There are strikeouts in this lineup, like you said. It's just a matter of kind of navigating 1 through 4. I agree he's underpriced. Yeah, I mean, I think the ownership on him makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if I got a little bit more.
I expect him to be a guy I get to a lot. Like, how big do you think the gap is between Hunter Green and Kopech here?
Pretty big.
Okay. Like, I've got Green by 0.9 of a point, but I think their ceilings are the same today.
Wait, you said you have Green by 0.9 of a point?
Yeah.
That seems low. We have him by about 3 DraftKings points.
Okay.
I mean, for the season, Green is striking out about 6% more hitters lower walk rate, better xFIP, better matchup in terms of strikeouts, probably.
I don't know about that.
Well, I was just kind of discounting the top part where like
That's fair.
Ohtani and Trout strike out, but they also are Ohtani and Trout.
Right. Yeah, something I'll look at. We'll see if any lines move or anything like that. I'm a big Kopech guy today. What can I say? I'm a big Kopech guy at 16% ownership. Like if Suarez and Steele are getting 15 and 15 and like are only $1,000 cheaper, I think the ceiling on those guys is just not even in the same ballpark for this matchup. That's sort of more my thing. Instead of going down further into the sixes, I'd rather just stop at Kopech at 7,600.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Let's talk about Angels bats. How do you like handling the Angels on days where you can't roster Ohtani as a bat? I don't find them all that interesting in this spot, but clearly
makes them
the
less
upside
interesting.
could be there. They'd be great. Like, they could be very interesting if Ohtani was able to be rostered as a hitter.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you look at Kopech splits this year. Actually, really weird. He's striking out 28.5% of lefties compared to 19% of righties, but he's also allowed a 241 expected ISO to lefties compared to 150 to righties. I would like to play Ohtani against Kopech if I could, but I can't. So it does obviously just make that lineup more difficult to stack because for one, you're missing one of the best hitters in the lineup, but for two, it's just giving you fewer options as well. Certainly still don't mind going to Jared Walsh. Obviously, I like Ward and Trout. After that, though, it becomes pretty difficult to like much of anything.
Yeah, it's tough. White Sox are dead last in aggregate ownership today. Dead last in our top stack tool. Is there any justification for getting to the White Sox against Ohtani?
It's kind of the same justification you would use for the Cardinals if you wanted to go there. Like they're a good high upside offense that isn't going to get much ownership. The opposing pitcher's getting some ownership, but I doubt that I really get to it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else that I could possibly say here. From a cash perspective, the only option in this game is actually Ohtani pitching, which if you don't have him in cash, I assume you're doing it wrong.
Mike Trout also.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he is. I thought, like, if you want to play the absolute, like, any one of the 10 best hitters, it's never going to be incorrect. I don't know if you get there because of the Dodgers today.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying that Trout's for sure in cash, but, like, there's a decent chance he ends up in your cash lineup.
Yeah.
But
no, no problem.
I would think cash pitching is Ohtani and probably Green.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if it's not. If you have enough money to go Ohtani, Manoah, like I think that's probably like the overall better option. I just don't know if it works, but Green.
For what it's worth, we have Green projected higher than Manoah, and I think I agree with that.
I have Manoah by 2.5 fantasy points, so I think we've already established that my Hunter Green projection is slightly different.
Yeah, we have Green by 1. We have Green as the 4th highest projected pitcher on the slate behind Ohtani, Wright, and Alcantara.
Oh, see, that's weird. Like, I have Wright and Green the same. I've got Sandy by 0.6 over Green. I have Ohtani as the highest pitcher, but only by 0.3 of a point ahead of Manoah. I'm just a huge Manoah guy.
Yeah, we're spots to be high on.
Favorite pitchers, which we just kind of did.
What'd you say, favorite pitchers?
Yeah.
Ohtani, Green. I think I'll just end up with a lot of those guys, honestly. But I am interested in the Kopech $7,600 price tag, too.
Favorite stacks?
Minnesota, Atlanta, Colorado.
There we go. Time to
quick. I forgot them too.
Oh, there you go. Time to take a quick look at the early slate for DK, which locks at 1 p.m. Guys, hit that like button as we get to this breakdown. I'm looking at our top stack tool right now, and this looks like a mildly difficult slate to break down. Texas, Washington, New York, all basically tied with the same top stack odds. Texas slightly better from a value perspective. The Yankees obviously not the same sort of value. Houston and Pittsburgh, not all that different than those first 3 teams either from a top stack percentage. What do you see when you look at stacks for this DK early slate? Because I think that it looks pretty difficult to break down.
Yeah, I think so too. It is interesting to me that we have Washington and New York pulling a little bit more ownership than Texas. even though we have Texas slightly as the highest top stack percentage and the top value percentage, the matchup against Greinke is great. The way that looks, it makes me think I'm probably going to get to a lot of Texas and then maybe a little bit less of Washington and New York, getting to more of like Houston than those teams probably.
You also get the benefit of Greinke being, 16% owned at the pitching spot. Keller and Irvin not owned like that. Any down the line teams that you want to look at? Is there anything else that jumps out from a stack perspective outside of you mentioning Texas there? I just don't see a lot that's like, oh, that's an obvious positive leverage team. Oh, that's a team I want to get to. Like, nobody's ownership is really breaking free from the pack. We've got two highly owned pitchers that we're going to talk about in a second here that's sort of driving down ownership for two other offenses. But I don't see any very obvious spots from a stack perspective.
Houston, I think, is the one that really stands out.
Yeah. 27% ownership going to Taijuan Walker right now. Their top stack odds higher than their ownership share. Sort of an anti-optimizer team because they're not the best value. I get where you're going.
But there are some cheap bats, assuming that we have the right lineup in ownership projections. So you have, like, toward the bottom of the order, you do have 2K Jake Myers, $2,200 Castro, $2,900 Gurriel. Jeremy Pena is only 4K hitting second. So you can sort of use guys to offset the salaries a little bit. And then, obviously Alvarez, Altuve, Tucker are all expensive. Bregman.
From a pitching perspective, Jameson Taillon and Justin Verlander are our top two pitchers. They are basically equal in top two pitcher percentage. They are basically equal in ownership projections, which is right at the 50% mark. Does that look right to you? Because I don't really see much of a problem with those two guys pulling a ton of ownership.
Yeah, it seems fine. Taillon's got the good matchup against Oakland, and he's reasonably priced. Verlander has a tough matchup against the Mets, but it's just a slate that doesn't have a lot of particularly good pitching.
God, I've got like a hair dangling on the back of my neck. I just feel like fucking spiders crawling on me. I hate it. I can't figure out what it's doing. Every time I reach back, there's just nothing coming back into my hand. All right, if you don't want to go to Taillon and Verlander, what is the next spot that you see? We've got a bunch of positively leveraged pitchers. I just don't know how much that matters.
I mean, I like Dunning against KC. I'm kind of surprised he's not getting more ownership than he is. He's $7,400. He's facing a relatively weak Kansas City offense. He's a good pitcher in his own right. It's not like you're talking about a bad starting pitcher here. For the season, he struck out 20.8% of hitters with a 3.88 xFIP. I don't know why he's getting less ownership than Taijuan Walker, for example. Like, who in their right mind wants to pay $8,800 for Taijuan Walker against Houston instead of Dane Dunning against Kansas City for $1,400 less? So really like Dunning. I like Espino at $5,400. He's not a particularly good pitcher, but he is facing Pittsburgh. He is really, really cheap. So those two guys stand out to me, but especially Dunning.
Anything else you want to touch on from this early slate for DK? Are you playing it?
Yeah, I just registered as we were talking.
There we go. Anything else you want to touch on for the slate?
Nope.
GPP videos coming up, I assume, sometime after the early slate lock?
Yes.
Okay. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Adam will be back on the deeper dive with the boss man, Alex Baker. Plus, you'll get live before lock and PGA live before lock. Hit that like button if you haven't done it yet, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this bad boy. Good luck in everything you do. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Peace.